Hi everyone, my name is Courtney and welcome back to my channel. And today I'm going to be starting a little reading vlog in anticipation for Banned Book Week in America, which runs September 18th through the 24th this year. If you want to know more about Banned Book Week, I highly suggest checking out ALA.org, which I will leave in the dibbly-doo down below. But basically, LAA is an organization that tracks banned and challenged books during the year. They always release a top 10 of the year of the most recently banned and challenged books, and they're just a great resource that we have. And the organization's main point is that they believe in reading without censorship, and especially for America, this is really important because in the past couple years, challenging has been on the rise. It's always been present, but in the past 4 or 5 years, it's really been on the rise. In the past 2 years, it's been extremely on the rise, and a lot of times the target for these challenges are against books that talk about or have characters of color, mainly Black characters, and of course LGBT characters. And this can be anything from nonfiction discussing anti-racism to full out just having a Black character in a book that experiences racism in some sort of way, or just a character that exists that is either Black or LGBT, and both. There is another side to bans and challenges. A lot of times we see books getting banned and challenged by left-wing people because a author has come out as transphobic or there have been sexual assault allegations against them. That's not to say that challenging does not come from both sides of the political sphere, but I think it's really important to remember, yes, they are mainly coming from the right wing, and those challenges tend to be a lot more about just a person's identity, and that's mainly where those challenges are coming from. One of my favorite YouTube accounts is Ashley from Bookish Realm, and she is a current librarian, and she discusses a lot of these kind of issues, and she kind of discusses the line of being a content creator versus a librarian and those different jobs, and I find it a really interesting discussion because as a creator, I never want to say you shouldn't read something. I never really necessarily want to disparage a book because of its content, its author, whatever it is, but at the same time, I, as an influencer, not really, but as someone who is promoting books, I like to be more careful and choose the books that I'm promoting. I don't necessarily want to go out of my way to promote books that have bad representation or to promote authors that are doing harm to communities. And especially with the author side of things, it's a very hard line of where you're willing to define things as harmful or not, and it's a really tricky subject. But going back to banned and challenged books, it's a really important issue because there's a difference from a librarian or a bookstore or whatever it is. It's a very big difference from them curating their shelves to the readers, to the buyers, and them taking books off shelves and censoring books because they're not deemed appropriate. That's where it crosses into freedom of speech. Freedom of speech, in my opinion, does not mean that any person ever needs to be published. It is very easy for someone to be self-published or for them to get their word out, but that doesn't mean there's not consequences for publishing or saying things that they want to say. I definitely believe in that. But at the same time, if you are being published, it is a big difference for your book to be challenged or banned because of the material in it versus an individual citizen not feeling like they are getting a platform. I'm kind of stumbling over a lot of different issues in this, but it is a tricky topic. There's a lot of different things, and banning and challenging and freedom of speech has become a lot different, especially as we enter a media age, a social media age. But going back to banned and challenged books, I think one of the most important things is banning and challenging books that would reach minors. As an individual parent, you get to decide what is appropriate or not appropriate for your child to read. Totally respect that. But in a public sphere, in a library, in a classroom, it's a little bit different because when you are saying that this book isn't allowed at my library, I don't want this here because of XYZ, especially if that book by most people's standards is appropriate for that reading level, it's fine if you don't want your child to read that material, but to hinder someone else's child, a child that might really need that text for whatever reason, it's harmful. It's very harmful because it harms kids from seeing people that are like them, that are like their families, and it's not giving the opportunity for that child's family to decide what is appropriate or not appropriate for their readers. I will link this article in the dibbly-doo down below, but another important thing that comes to mind is Jason Reynolds' discussion. He is an author that is often on the banned and challenged book list, and he really talked about how being banned is not an honor. It's not some cute, fun thing like, oh my gosh, I'm doing something right because I'm being banned or challenged, because at the end of the day, that ban and challenge is hurting a reader from accessing material that they might need. And again, going back to the past couple years, banning and challenging, it's becoming a lot more of a bigger topic. It's just becoming a lot more seen in the media, and because of that, I think we are getting a lot more bans and challenges. So it's not like a cute, fun thing to be banned and challenged. It's really disconcerting, especially when you're seeing like picture book, middle grade books, just all these kind of things that don't really have a reason to be banned or challenged other than it promotes an idea that someone might just not like or agree with. And those bans or challenges, again, are hurting the community when the person that just doesn't like the material can just turn a blind eye and not read it themselves. So for Banned Book Week this week, can you hear the storm that's outside? It's coming. I can hear it coming. But anyway, for Banned Book Week this year, I do want to participate. I'm participating a little earlier so I can get this video out before Banned Book Week, but I am participating in my own way. In curating this list, I was mostly looking at the top 10 of 2021 and previous years, because if you look through the past couple years, it's just very obvious. Most of the books from 2021 are books that include LGBT representation, and a lot of the books from 2020 are from Black voices, which it's very obvious. It's very obvious. We have the George Floyd riots, we have Black Lives Matter protests, suddenly a bunch of Black books are getting banned. LGBT topics, especially trans identities, are becoming a hot button issue as people try to restrict people's rights. And again, we're seeing a lot of books banned for trans representation and LGBT representation. And so let's go over the 3 books that I've decided to read for this week that kind of, I think, encompass the last couple years of banning and challenging. So my first read that I have is Melissa by Alex Gino. This is a book I've always wanted to read. It's always been on my radar, but I've just never gotten to it. And this is a children's, maybe middle grade book about a girl who knows she's a girl and wants to play Charlotte in an upcoming production of Charlotte's Web at her school, but she is not allowed to do so because she is seen as a boy. I think this will be really short and fun. I've only heard great things about this, and I'm excited to read this. Melissa was not banned last year, which was kind of a surprise to a lot of people. It's been pretty much banned and challenged since it's been released. This is just one of those books that the right wing has decided is a big target and has really gone after year after year after year, so it was kind of a surprise that it was not on the list last year. I'm pretty sure it's going to make a return this year. I just see that as very likely, but I'm very excited to read this because it's always been on my own personal reading list. The next book I have is Genderqueer, which is a memoir by Maya Kababe, and this again is another book that's been really targeted, especially in the last year. Again, this is a book that I've always wanted to read and I decided to get it. This is the new deluxe edition. I really wanted the original edition just because I really love that cover, but I will settle for extra material. This is a really interesting one because this is a graphic memoir aimed at adults. Like, it is for an adult audience. Yes, there are a lot of teen readers, but this is a graphic memoir about queerness and about trans identities. So I'm excited to read this. I've wanted to read it for a while, and I'm pretty certain that this book is going to end up on the Banned and Challenge book list this year because, again, it has been really heavily targeted for its discussion of transness, and I believe there is one scene that shows a blowjob, but from what I've heard, that scene is just talking about consent. I know that there are dark topics in here because the author is talking a lot about their own trauma. Again, it's for adult readers, so it's weird that it's not weird, but you know, it's kind of unnecessary that it's getting censored so highly, because a lot of times this isn't going to be in like a school library anyway, because again, it's for adults. And have you seen school libraries? Have you seen the books that kids read for school? At least when I was in school, they weren't necessarily always sex-free or not sanitized. Censoring, it's odd. And my final book that I'm reading for this challenge is All Boys Aren't Blue, and this is another memoir, and I believe this memoir is aimed at teen readers. This is by George M. Johnson. I believe this book was on the Ban and Challenge list last year when it came out. I believe it came out. Did it come out last year? This came out in 2020, so it might have been on the banned book list on 2020's list as well. I'm not quite sure, but I know it was on the 2021 list, and I would not be surprised if we see it again this year. Again, this covers blackness, it covers transness, and it's specifically aimed at at teen readers. So what can you do? So yeah, it makes sense. Well, it doesn't make sense, but like I understand why it's getting banned and challenged, because the right do not like any books that talk about transness or anti-racism in any kind of way. But yes, I'm excited to read all 3 of these books. I'm really, really interested in them. And I wouldn't say I'm excited to see this year's list, but I am intrigued to see if I've guessed correctly. I think all 3 of these books are going to end up on the list this year. And if the weird Virginia lawsuit is anything to go by, I think we're oddly going to see Sarah J. Maas on this list for the first time. As for any other guesses, I think it's going to be aimed at queer books, specifically trans queer books, and I think it's going to swing back and contain some books about anti-racism and blackness as well. I would not be surprised if Anti-Racist Baby ends up on the list or something like that again. Yeah, I'm excited to read these books. I think I'm going to start with Melissa because it's short and the font is big because it is meant for children readers. But yeah, I'm excited to read this and I will let you know how it goes. But let's get into this banned book reading list. So I just finished Melissa and it was so cute. I read it in a couple hours. It was super easy and fun to read. And it definitely looks like I've been reading it. Oh my goodness. Anyway, Melissa is a young reader's, maybe middle grade book. And it is about a young girl named Melissa who knows she's a girl despite being seen as a boy by everybody else. And she really wants to be Charlotte in the school's production of Charlotte's Web. It's really sweet, really cute. I feel like it deals with the material in a really easy to access way for younger readers. And I want more. I want a sequel. I want to know how Melissa's life is going, everything after this. I'm just pretty invested in her and her story, and I really, really loved the last chapter and just how much joy there was in that last chapter. I looked up the reason why Melissa has been banned, and basically it's been banned for LGBT content that I'm trying to remember the exact wording they used, but it was like LGBTQI plus content that is against religious viewpoints. The book is actively harmful, not actively harmful, what did they say? Like actively against the viewpoints of the community, which is just utter nonsense, you know, because even in pretty small communities, you know, LGBT people exist. And that's the really sad thing is like this book is just about a character existing, just being a person, and people are against that. They're just against like a person expressing themselves, being a person around other people. They're against books where kids just are being themselves. Like that's written on the back, be who you are. Like that is like the entire book is just Melissa trying to accept herself and get other people to accept her as well for who she sees herself as. But yes, I would definitely recommend this. It was really cute, just as good as everybody said, and I gave it a 4 stars. And it's the perfect way to start off this banned book readathon. So it is now Monday around noon. I have to go to work in a couple hours, but this weekend it was a lot. First I had work yesterday on Sunday, and then on Saturday all of my stuff that was traveling from New York home with me, because I'm moving home permanently, or at least for the next foreseeable future, all of my stuff finally came in. So it was a lot of going back and forth to the storage unit that we bought or are renting and putting all my furniture that just came in there, and then back and forth, putting stuff here, putting stuff over there, and we're still doing it. But like for the first time in 8 years, I have all of my clothes in one place. I have all my books in one place. I just have all my stuff in one place, and I'm seeing all my stuff that I've accumulated over the past 8 years, you know, living in 2 different cities. Well, living in 3 different cities, really, if you count college too. You know, I didn't have a car. I didn't have resources to be able to take clothes to the thrift store, to sell things or whatever. And so for the first time, I'm able to really purge and look at everything that I own. So, you know, a lot of purging of clothes, purging of books, which I will be covering. But with all that, I also rearranged my bookshelves. So I have 2 bookshelves over here, and then I have another one all the way over there by my desk. My bed is in a new spot. My desk is in a new spot. That's to say there's a lot going on. So I haven't read anything until this morning. So this morning I started reading Genderqueer, and I'm a little more than halfway through this, and I am loving it. In this edition, there is a foreword by Andy Stevenson, or Nate Stevenson, who is the person that wrote Nimona and some other webcomic stuff that was really popular that I followed over the years. And they are also the creator behind the new She-Ra. So I really, really enjoyed their foreword. They have some really great lines, but they talk about how their parents were really restrictive of what they read and how they would secretly go to the library to read things that they wanted to read. One part in the foreword really stuck out to me. At the time of writing this, parents in Texas and other states have pushed to have genderqueer banned from school libraries. It's not enough for them to rigorously restrict what their own children read, as my parents did. They insist that they have the right to make the choice for everyone. And then they go on to say, like, I understand why they're doing this. You know, they just need the world to be uncomplicated. They see this kind of stuff as a threat and they need to make it unthreatening. And they don't want anything that's going to challenge their very small idea of what the world is and how it works. I totally agree. It was just such a great line, such a great paragraph. And their foreword was excellent. I think they do have a memoir, or a very short memoir, but I would love to know more about their childhood and like how they came into themselves too, because what I read of them was really interesting. So far, Genderqueer is going really, really well. This is definitely a book for a older teen up, definitely an adult read. I think older teens could handle this, but it talks a lot about sexuality, which includes like fantasizing, masturbation, all of that kind of stuff. And it's really good. It's really reflective, and it's just really frank and honest. You know, it's something that I've thought about and something that I've written about more as like a diary entry to myself and stuff, trying to figure myself out. But it's basically going through this author's, Maya's, life through their formative childhood years into like college and stuff. You know, even them in grad school, like they're still trying to figure out their gender and how it intersects with their sexuality and all of that. And there's a lot that's relatable. Maya really struggles with, what gender am I? What do I want to identify as? What are my pronouns? Doesn't matter because I don't blah blah blah. I have sexual fantasies, but I'm not really interested in pursuing relationships or having sex myself. Am I asexual? Am I bi? Blah 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 blah. And yeah, I get that. I get a lot of it. There are some things that I don't relate to, haven't had those feelings, whatever, but there is a lot in here that is just really relatable, and it's really, really nice to read, something where I can see myself in. And they talk about how they came into being a big reader and everything too. It's a lot about their life. It's not just about sex and sexuality and gender. I got to the section where they're talking about their most read books over the past 10 years because they've been cataloging it. And one of their most read authors for their manga section, Higuchi Tachibana, which is the author of Gakuen Alice, and they obviously have read Gakuen Alice. I don't know if they've read the entire thing yet because it only says 12, which I'm assuming is 12 volumes, and the manga I believe has 30 plus. But just seeing Gakuen Alice is one of the highest things that one of the most things that they had read over the past 10 years. I was like, ooh, yes, me too. One of my favorites. So that was really fun to see in there. There's a lot of other things that we overlap with in ways of taste and things that we like, but it was just nice to see an old friend because I never see Gakuen Alice stuff. That was just a little thing. I want to get back to this and try and finish it before I have to go to work. Possibly, maybe not. I probably won't finish it before I go to work, but I am immensely enjoying it. There are some things that are really hard to read. They talked a lot about like their nightmares and fears that they've had, and yeah, it was just hard to read some of those sections because I personally haven't had a lot of like nightmares like that, but so it was just really scary to read about that kind of stuff where you can't control your fantasies or your dreams or whatever. So yeah, but I'm really enjoying this and I'm going to continue reading it. Hello, it is now the 14th. I just can't believe we are already halfway through the month. But 2 days ago, I finished Genderqueer, and I really, really enjoyed this. There was just so much that I related to, and I was really surprised how much I related to it. And it felt really good to read, and I would highly recommend it to people, especially like queer people who are unlabeled or just define themselves as queer, people that are kind of in the edges or in the transitional periods between different gender, sexuality, identities. I think it's really relatable for that. So I really enjoyed this, and I ended up giving it a 4.5 stars, only because this art style, coloring style isn't my favorite. I was looking at some of the black and white photos that the author had drawn originally, and I almost like this better for them. I don't know, just something about the black backgrounds, the use of black just really works for me. There's nothing wrong with the art style, it's just a personal thing. But yeah, I really enjoyed this. It was really, really good. And I looked up why Genderqueer was was banned, and it is specifically because of LGBTQIA plus themes as well as images that were deemed sexually explicit. Like, I wouldn't go so far as to call this porn, like it's obviously not porn, but like there are discussions of sexuality and discussions of sex and images that have sexual acts in them. I wouldn't even go far necessarily to call it explicit, but like it definitely feels like it's more for older teens and older adults, and not that younger teen, not that even children, because I learned about sex when I was in 4th grade by my school. So like, not that those discussions and those images shouldn't necessarily be seen by teens, or you know, we shouldn't discuss sex with teens or younger, but I do think it has to be done in maybe a different way, especially because they're just learning about it. So, you know, you're having a different kind of conversation about sex and all of that. But yeah, I would definitely recommend this. It was really great and very relatable, and I think a lot of people can get a lot out of this. And so with that done, well, first of all, I've had a very busy past couple days finally getting my room and, more importantly, my desk in order. So that was really fun. I've also filmed an unhaul, and I'm working on making a Pango book account so that I can sell some of the books that I don't need anymore. But along with that, I have started my 3rd and final novel for this challenge, which is All Boys Aren't Blue, which is a teen memoir, or a memoir directed to teens. This is called A Memoir Manifesto, and it's by George M. Johnson. So it's him talking about his life, his experiences, him growing up. So I just wanted to clarify really quick. I use he, him pronouns for George throughout this video because in the book itself and in the author biography section, they refer to themselves with the he pronouns. I think it's more recent, but they have come out as using they, them pronouns, so just be mindful of that, and I will also be mindful of that in the future. Mostly so far, I'm like this way through the book, and it's mostly just about him being a kid and a teen and just talking about those experiences, kind of always knowing that he's other, kind of always knowing that he's queer, and him in that experience. And if you don't know, he is an activist. I want to look more into the activism work that he's doing, but it's obviously for the Black and LGBTQIA plus community. So I want to learn more about him as a person. But yeah, so far, very interesting. The kind of discussions that he's having in here, I think, are great. As I'm not a teen, as I'm not a Black teen, I obviously don't think this book is directly aimed at me, but I know a lot of kids could get a lot out of this. So yes, so far I would highly recommend it. But yeah, I just have to finish up this book and then we can wrap this up with our thoughts about everything. But yeah, that's how it's going. It's going pretty good. I don't know if I'm going to finish this tonight. I've been enjoying it, but I have been trying to pace myself, and I know that I have work tonight, so I want to relax fully before I have to go stand on my feet for 5 hours. But yeah, going good. So a couple days ago, I did end up finishing All Boys Aren't Blue, so it's time to wrap up this vlog. So All Boys Aren't Blue is a memoir of J.M. Johnson's, pretty much his childhood all the way through college. It's a really interesting memoir because a lot of the sections are addressing particular family members, and so it's talking about his experience growing up, but it's also relating to his activism and a bigger community. And I do feel like a lot of kids could get a lot out of this, and that it's a really important text for them. And this book is often banned or challenged or censored because of its LGBT content, and also because it's deemed sexually explicit. This book does talk about sex. It does talk about abuse and sexual abuse, particularly done by a family member. There are content warnings in this book, and it's discussed why these things are included in the book and why they're important for him to tell and why it's important for teens to read and know these things. And so while it might not be appropriate for every teen reader, it's definitely important to a lot of them, especially a Black queer teen. To take this memoir or censor it from other kids just seems really wrong and harmful, because the kids that are experiencing those things, you can't shield them from that. I didn't end up rating this book because it is such a personal memoir. It just felt wrong to kind of rate it, but it is a book I would highly recommend to people that are comfortable reading those subject materials. But yes, it's a very powerful memoir, and it's a book that's been on my TBR for a while, so I'm glad I finally got to finish it. And I've really enjoyed my reading vlog experience. I got to read 3 books that I've previously wanted or had interest in. I got to read 3 books that I've had interest in or previously wanted to read. Melissa, Genderqueer, All Boys Aren't Blue are books that are being censored and taken away from kids who really need them. There are content warnings on books for a reason. Authors include them for a reason. books are put into different age categories for a reason so they can find the appropriate reader, but taking them out of the library altogether is really harmful. Maybe it's protecting your own child, maybe. If the kid really wants to read a book, they'll find it. So the people you're really harming when you censor a book is really the kids that can't get access to it, which oftentimes is the kid that's being represented in the story. But I hope that gives you some things to think about for Banned Book Week. It's important to continue to read banned and challenged books and to challenge those challenges. Let me know if you're planning on reading any banned books or reading anything for Banned Book Week. I would love to know. This project covered some heavy topics, but it was a really fun project to do, and I really enjoyed reading everything that I got to read. So thank you so much for watching. I'll see you guys later, and happy reading.